Hey Trailblazers and Tarmac Tacklers, welcome back to the Maximum Mileage Running Podcast. This is your one-stop shop for everything ultra, road and trail running.
And don't forget, we've got all your off-road adventures covered too.
And I'm your host, Nick Hancock, Head of Coaching here at Maximum Mileage, here to deliver pro advice, humour and inspiration for those of you tackling marathons and beyond.
And I'm Faye Johnson, your co-host. I am also a certified running coach, personal trainer and the resident mountain goat. Whether it's road running or ultra marathons, we've got the tips and tricks to get you through your training.
Exactly. Whether you are squeezing miles into a busy schedule or just dipping your toes into long distance running, we've got your back. So lace up, gear up and get ready for maximum mileage. Let's get into it. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to the Maximum Mileage Coaching Podcast. And my next guest is an athlete that I actually coach myself. He's been with me since pretty much day one of Maximum Mileage. He's my loyalist customer. Welcome to James Scott. And James, just a little bit of a background, has done some awesome stuff since we've been working together as coach and athlete, including getting his marathon PB down to an astonishing 3:08. He's run Race of the Stones 100K. He's done Brecon to Cardiff 44 miler in a biblical storm, and he has done Wendover Woods 50 miler. He's run 100 miles at Endure 24, and he's recently achieved the finish of the mammoth 145 mile Kenneth and Avon Canal race. And I think he even did a parkrun PB once too. James, welcome.
Hey mate, you all right?
Yeah, I'm good, thank you. Thanks for coming on.
Thank you.
So, like I like to kick off every episode, James, what is your why? Why do you run? And, when you're 80, 90 miles into those, those crazy ultra marathons and you're asking yourself, why the hell am I doing this? What is it that keeps you going?
Yeah, that's your question. You love to ask all of us, isn't it? In amongst the team in those dark moments. It's almost like, well, there's like two parts to my why, which is the why in the moment of a race and also the why around running in general. I guess the why in the moment of the race and that kind of point when you're like, literally, why am I doing this when everything's hurting? I think I was never particularly sporty, athletic growing up. It was never my forte. My thing was always my brain. And I was being that kind of a geeky pack at school, I guess, rather than the ones that were playing football. And yeah, I think running, I started around the age of 18. It was just something that I guess I found I was kind of all right at. And for me, there's a lot of satisfaction. Actually, I found something sporting that I could do an all right job at. And it's that sense of, well, I want to prove that I can do this. And that's the kind of why I think, I came closest to DNF that I've come in this last event. But, I haven't yet not finished anything because my why is always, well, I want to prove that I can do this and and kind of stand out. And more broadly, I guess the why around running is, that sense of headspace, that sense of peace you get when you've come back from it all, has always served quite a sort of therapeutic value for me, found.
Yeah. No, I mean, we've talked about this so many times about your why, and I know you love to test yourself, and that's why you're these challenges that you're putting yourself up for are getting crazier and crazier and testing my coaching ability more and more. It is amazing how much you, and it was when I was talking to Andy Berry, actually, he talked about, you talk about DNFing, and actually sometimes DNFing, particularly in the ultra world, is actually, it's not a bad thing. Because some of us are trying to push ourselves so much. We're trying to find, like, what is my finish line? And you still haven't found your finish line yet.
No.
How many ultras have you done now?
Maybe 5 or 6 official events, and obviously the very first ultra distance I did was in lockdown actually, and did an unofficial East of the Stones. No, you make a good point about the DNF, and the funny thing was that I had almost made peace with the idea going into that checkpoint in Bradford Avon at that last race. I was going to DNF and almost take that as my lesson around DNFing and being okay with that. And also, as I said, I've heard the podcast you did recently where you sort of talked about it, and the thing is, where is that end of what is my how much is too much? But it's taken into account the time and the cost and everything, I guess, that comes with doing these massive races. And that 145 miles, it wasn't fun. It was painful, lonely. It was part of me was like, well, I'm paying for this and I'm not having fun, so let's go home. Was again part of what was in my head going into that checkpoint where I was basically refused to DNF by the staff at the aid station, which proved to be very effective. But
and sorry, Faye, 1 second, just a really quick shout out to those aid station staff, because that's what you want in an ultramarathon. You want the aid station staff to be really, unless you are in trouble or in danger, you want them to be saying, no, get yourself back out there. So all kudos to the Kenneth and Avon Canal race aid station staff at Bradford and Avon for telling you to get off your arse and get out there.
Yeah.
Go on, Faye, sorry.
No, James, is that what turned it around for you? Is that what, I mean, if you were having that conversation in your head about DNFing, what was it? Okay, they played a big part in getting you to keep going, but what was it? Was there something in particular that made you go, right, come on, let's keep going, let's finish this?
Right, so rather pathetically, my protective factor until that point around wanting to finish was the fact I had a hoodie that I had paid for and had been given at the start line. It was in my drop bag, which I thought, I paid 30 quid for that hoodie that I'm not going to want to wear, because if I haven't finished something, I won't want to wear it. So I'm going to try and finish so I can justify wearing that hoodie. There came a point when the pain that I was in and the isolation, because it was a pretty lonely race. So 55-ish starters, 27 finishes, spread over 145 miles. You were very quickly, maybe with a couple of other runners, and even halfway on, you're basically on your own. Like, you might be overtaken. I was never catching anyone else up, but you're on your own. It was kind of like, what am I getting out of this that is positive, other than testing myself in the pain cage, basically. So that was kind of it. I just thought, there's nothing I'm getting out of this I'm enjoying anymore, so I'm gonna quit. But no, other than the hoodie, it was then the staff at the aid station who were ready and waiting to basically come at me with everything I had to say. They had a counter response about, I'm going to get a train. There aren't any trains. I said, there are trains. I've looked on the National Rail app. Well, we can't get you to a train station for a while. You're going to go on, aren't you? And I was like, no. We ended up agreeing. Part of my anxiety was that my bag was then going to go from Bradford and Avon all the way to the finish line. And I didn't want my bag trapped in Bristol with me, giving up before then. So they agreed that they would take my bag to Bath, which was the next stop.
Yeah.
And they said, if you get to Bath and you're still done, then your bag's there and you can get on a train at Bath and go home. But by the time I got to Bath, it was 13 miles to the finish. I was doing the maths that it was probably going to be okay to reach the cut-off. Because again, that was part of it. I was constantly doing the maths, and I was actually getting more and more concerned I was going to miss the finish cut-off of 45 hours, which was, playing a part in all that.
I'm just trying to look through the text messages between you and I as you were trudging your way through those last few miles, and I can't find them, but I remember saying something like 10 miles left, get a fucking move on. I can't remember what it was now, but
yeah.
but
it's a funny event actually, because the last 13 miles from Bath to Bristol are arguably some of the most challenging, because you're just winding your way through these meadows, which it's a race that actually is even harder on the people at the back end of the field, because you end up finishing in the dark of the second night, and you're trying to follow these trails through these meadows that, you know, I thankfully I had a GPS on my watch that I was following, but I think you'd have really struggled in the dark to follow these tracks through the meadows, heading towards Bristol. And I was sort of odd hallucinations by that point as well. I kind of felt like I saw a Bambi deer in front of me, which almost instantly vanished, which could have been a deer, but
could have,
it wasn't hanging around for very long.
I remember you saying, my head torch lasted 6 hours on medium light. I had to swap batteries in the dark. And this was after about 24 hours. And I said, well, if you get a hurry on, you won't have to worry about that later.
No, the head torch came back for a second outing.
Yeah. Well, look, talk us through the race a little bit. We've heard about some of the end of it, but it wasn't all like that. So talk to us about the start and how did the start go for you, James?
Yeah, I have a habit of going over just when I don't want to. I managed, I think, about 15 meters of the race before I managed to trip over. Did a fairly good job on my knee actually, and kind of just the butts of your palms, actually that classic reflex landing. I tripped over a metal mooring ring. There's obviously there for the boats on the canal path to moor to.
15 meters.
Yeah, I managed to
meters into a 145-mile race.
Yeah, and a nice trickle of blood down my shin that I just let dry on, and would stay there for the next 144 miles.
But do you know what though? Like that for me is just kind of testament to how strong-minded you are, because that kind of stuff, even 26 miles into a 50k, into a 31-mile race can send some people into, I can't finish this now. So to do that literally, 3 seconds after you started, and to carry on without it, I'm not going to say without it bothering you, because it probably still did, at least for some time, it is remarkable. Absolutely remarkable.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing, it's hadn't paid all the money and done all the training to kind of turn around and say, ouch, I'm done. And
I got a bad ED.
Yeah, the start, the start gun adrenaline and the embarrassment were probably enough of a factor to mask the worst of the pain, until I was able to sort of run it off. But equally, night before, didn't sleep a wink.
No, you didn't, did you?
Booked a rather cheap hotel in Paddington, which came back to bite me in terms of the noise, and just pretty much account for every minute from when I lay down at 8:30 right through to when I got up at 4 a.m.
And your train was late getting in, wasn't it, as well?
Yeah. So it's all factor things, but essentially I was starting the race almost a night of sleep down as it was, which wasn't ideal. But yeah. But no, you said sort of talk me through the race. It was a positive sort of first, not first third. I mean, up to 30 miles, things were good. I was moving well.
You were going along at a nice 11, 12-minute mile pace, I remember seeing.
Yeah, and amongst good company, a few people that I kind of fell into pace with. So I had, some people to chat to, navigate with, where there was diversions off the path and what have you. And was moving fine, but it was from about 30 miles onwards where, energy wise, I was bang on. Aerobically fine for energy, but things just started to hurt. Glutes quite quickly were starting to feel it. Knees, feet, everything basically was starting to hurt pretty much from 30 miles onwards, and that was just the story of it all. From that point, I was taking paracetamol in every drop bag. So aid stations on that event were pretty much every 25 miles. So you're pretty much doing a marathon between stops, and I had everything ready. So I had a little zipped bag that had all of the next bits of fuel in it with the number of miles on the outside of the bag. That was what I was going to grab, and in that was 2 paracetamol tablets, which I would knock back at each one. And I wasn't convinced that was doing much until I skipped them at bath, because I thought I want to be able to take a dose of paracetamol before bed, so I'm going to skip this one so I'm not in the risk of overdosing. And my God, did I notice the difference for that final bit to Bristol without any paracetamol.
For anybody listening, just a little quick background there. James is a lead pharmacist for an NHS trust, so yeah, he knows what he's doing with his dosage and things. So just don't go out doing this sort of stuff yourself if you don't know what you're doing. Particularly, don't take any ibuprofen, right, James? While you're running,
never ibuprofen or non-steroidal in a race. Those bad things to your kidneys. So yeah, always make sure you're after a race and peeing regularly and clearly before you start touching ibuprofen. But like paracetamol, I knew I wasn't going to be finishing a marathon any quicker than 4 to 6 hourly. So on that basis, I was comfortable taking dosing up that way. But I think I said to you quite soon after the event, Nick, that I think strength work and a lack thereof in this training block for me, by my own decision, played a part in me feeling it so much so quickly. Because obviously I'd done other events that were over 30 miles previous to that and hadn't started to feel the aches and pains as quickly.
But you were doing strength work then.
No, I wasn't, and that's a testament to that. I think that I had the aerobic base there to carry on, but the muscles just weren't strong enough to deal with that sort of pummeling over 30 miles, beyond 30 miles.
So would you say the reason for you not doing the strength work so you said you made that decision, was that purely because of the amount of miles you had to fit in for training and kind of fitting that training in around life, work, family? Was it a sacrifice you decided to make?
Exactly that. So I was paying for the gym up until Christmas of this year, and I wasn't getting in there. It was 30 plus quid a month, and I wasn't making use of it. Trying to fit 3 runs a week into my life, with family and work, is already kind of a push, and particularly when you've got those big mile weeks where it's a 20 miler on a weekend, like that's always a bit of a political negotiation at home. So trying to just get those 3 runs through, and then also say I was also going to go off to the gym for 30 minutes, 40 minutes, 2-3 times a week. It just wasn't going to happen. So purely because of the waste of money, I sacked it off. And
we'll come on to sort of your training in a bit, and I do want to talk a little bit about why your training is the way it is. So we'll come back to that. I definitely want to talk about why you don't do strength work, because people listening will be like, particularly any athletes I coach, will be like, what the fuck? you make me do strength training. But James is a slightly exceptional case, and I'll come to that in a bit. So after 30 miles.
Yeah. I think started to, I was slowing down. I think I was pretty much power walking from 30 miles, which, the fact I walked 115 miles rather than running was in itself something of a sort of, I guess, a psychological challenge. But I was managing to pretty much hit 4 miles an hour power walking, which was within tolerance of what I was happy with pace wise to get round. But just lost many people of company. It was always a kind of case of chunking it up and being like, okay, on to the next aid station. Don't think beyond that. Just that's where you're going to get, some human company for 10, 15 minutes to just get there, keep going. It's a great race in terms of, and I know you joked a bit about it, Nick, and said it was your idea of hell, really, kind of doing flat
flat along a
145
canal.
flat miles along
Okay.
along waterways. But it was mixed because it wasn't. It was kind of rivers. I mean, you did loads of the Thames Path, so I think we hit quite a lot of what's covered by Thames Path races.
Yeah.
And you're going through, Maidenhead, Henley, like all these really beautiful Thames side towns and villages. So, it's a real variation of scenery and what have you that did kind of to add to the experience. But yeah, I think at that point it was just a case of kind of carrying on. I was holding off on that was the other thing as well. I held off on caffeine, so I didn't bring caffeine into the mix until 50 miles, I think, maybe even 75. So I had non-caffeine gels in my bags at that point, and for sure, caffeine does have some of those perceived pain properties for me. I definitely notice it. So, again, the moment that the goo gels, which I was using with caffeine in, started to get into the mix, that was again helping a bit with just taking that edge off. That would last
The Roctane?
hour or so. No, I didn't use those ones. No, it was just a standard goo gels with the sort of slight variance in caffeine in each one. But yeah, that was fine. Food was fantastic. I was able to eat. I was eating McCain's microwave chips, McCain's microwave pizzas, tinned ravioli, and and nothing troubled my stomach.
Which
and
is
there were some.
Which is remarkable, isn't it? Because when we first started working together, your gut was your biggest Achilles heel.
That was anything beyond the marathon. It was my gut that was the rate limiting step to being able to really progress.
Done a lot of work together to get that right.
Yeah, and it's learning what works for me, and the single most important thing there is hydration. So, there was eyebrows raised by some of the other guys at the event actually when I was sort of banging on about the fact that I was having to carry 4 liters of water between aid stations because I wanted to be doing 500-ish mils an hour of fluid consistently. I know people are like, you're mad, you don't need to carry all that. But I was like, I do. I know I do. And I did not have an issue with my stomach. I didn't even go for a poo until I was back home.
Which is a little bit different from when you did Race to the Stones when we first.
Well, exactly, where you were running me in for the last 18 miles or so, and I was hopping over the fence. So, and there were people that did complain of the classic, nausea and vomiting overnight. So, and I wasn't in that category. So I think there was something to be said there around the keeping it up with the drinking. Yeah, no, fueling was fine, and then it was into the darkness. So out came the podcasts to kind of keep me some company, what have you. And yeah, it was only then that the tiredness and the fatigue really started to kick in. So I was walking along, and my eyelids just wanted to shut. Like wow. I could not fight the desire of my eyes to want to shut. And I'm thinking to myself, I'm walking along this windy, and the paths around the Kenneth, as you went up to the Kenneth, were particularly kind of precarious. The bits where the banks dropped away, so you have to make sure you're stepping over that, or you're going into the water. And I'm thinking, I'm in the dark, I'm on my own, my eyes don't want to stay open, and there's a body of water next to me. Is this safe?
And it's going to be really cold overnight as well.
It dropped a bit, so I think I put on a long sleeve layer. We were really lucky with the weather, actually. It could have well been grim, as it's been pretty much all over the summer. But yeah, I ended up resourcing to power napping. So I basically gunned for the next available bench once the tow path became a bit more established. Laid down on the bench, set an alarm on my phone for 10 minutes, and pretty much just dropped into a coma for 10 minutes, and then would be woken up by my phone. And it was just enough to take the edge off of things. So I did that twice, just around that kind of nighttime into the early morning hours, until your hormones pick up again, and you realise it's another day, and your body kind of puts you through.
Yeah.
You couldn't stop for more than 40 minutes, otherwise that was count as a DNF.
Oh, really?
And you were supposed to ring in to the race director if you were planning to stop for more than 30 minutes on your own. So to that end, I was like, well, I'll do these little 10-minute blasts. Obviously mindful of making the cuts as well. And it seems to go okay.
Yeah, nice.
And that kind of then takes us onto the grind really towards Bradford and Avon, where the DNF decision nearly happened.
And what did it feel like when you crossed that line? What went through your mind at that point? Because I'm trying to sort of, I haven't done a race that long, and I'm just trying to picture, is it elation? Is it, oh, thank fuck that's done? Or is it like, yes, real pumped, I've just done it, like you would when you finish in a 10K. I just can't imagine your body knows what the hell to do, or your mind knows what the hell to do.
Yeah, I think it's really the middle. I think it's the relief. It was almost like, okay, this is over. I'm done. Like, I can just stop now. That said, like, you're just in this place where you're just going, and it could have been another 10 miles, 15 miles at that point, and nothing would have really changed, because it was just the same, shuffle along, eat, drink, repeat, basically. But no, it was, obviously I was happy. I was proud of myself. I was third to last in the end, which was fine by me, given that,
well, you
15, 20 miles ago.
You weren't, because there were 55 starters and there were 27 finishes.
This is true. Okay, so of the 27 finishers, so delusions of being done by 10 o'clock, and being around in Bristol to get the last train home wasn't how it panned out. But the fact, as I say, that my race, had I been given my wishes, was over 20 miles ago, the fact that I was at the finish line was massive for me. So yeah,
and I still remember the picture you took afterwards. You still had the wherewithal to send me a picture of you in front of the finishers board, and pumping the air. And
it was all quite quick, to be fair. And I got in. They did me a Cornish pasty, which was absolutely amazing. It tasted so good. And my friend that comes to pick me up was very kindly waiting at the finish line, but I was probably only there about 15 minutes before I was jumping into his car and whizzing back home. But the rain, so it hadn't rained at all, really. I mean, we might have a little bit of drizzle at some points throughout the race, but it absolutely went biblical like 5 minutes after I'd got into the finish tent, which you wouldn't have seen coming, because it was obviously pitch black, so you can't see that the sky above you is pitchy heaving with dark clouds. So I kind of felt for the last two people that were out there, because there would have been no chance. They've got a waterproof on, and it was proper like super saturating, that type of rain where you didn't stand a chance. So
yeah, wow. I mean, what an achievement. And just it's stories like that. And this is why I sort of wanted to do this podcast in the way I wanted it, in the way I set out to do, is yes, we've got some big names like Beth Pascal and, Andy Berry, but also, you see those people on social media all the time, winning stuff. And people don't see and hear of some of these real stories sometimes. And for me, particularly in the ultra running world, for me, that's pure ultra running. That is gritting it out, and it isn't all about fast times and seeing these top elite athletes springing over the line after running 100 miles. It's these awesome stories like this that it's like that is just unreal. So yeah, all kudos to you for finishing the race, mate, because that's insane.
Absolutely,
I couldn't have done a 50k along a canal. I get too bored.
Nor could I. It's my worst nightmare. It's my worst nightmare. I just don't know how you did it.
No. James, thank you for telling us about the race. So what I wanted to sort of then follow that up with is a little bit about you, because I already mentioned that you are a lead pharmacist for an NHS trust, mental health trust in Wiltshire, which is an insanely busy job. You've got 2 young kids, 6 and 2.
2.
Yeah,
Yeah.
cool. 2 kids, 6 and 2. We already said that you've already said, that you can only run 3 days a week. And I've always said that strength training is such a huge important part of being a good runner. But there was that decision with you that because you only have those 3 days a week that you can train, that actually let's not push getting you into the gym, because we need to keep that running volume up. That is important. But with you being able to only train 3 days a week, sort of talk us through a little bit about what your training has been like. And I want to toot my own horn a little bit. It's my podcast. I'll do what I want. So it'd be great to hear, what has your training been like, and working with me over the, not just for this race, but over the last few years.
Yeah, no. I think you can look around you at other people doing same distance, even shorter distances, particularly on social media, and there's always this, you kind of get a whiff of their training plans, and you've alluded to it before, where often it's ones they've kind of got off the internet or free ones that the event's put together, and there's always these massive mile weeks, 30 plus mile long run for stuff.
I remember that Race to the Stones plan that you got from the Facebook group, wasn't it, when we first started working together? And it was like 3 weeks of 30 plus miles in a row, long run.
Yeah, and I think the thing with you was that you always said, philosophy wise, you don't need to do that. Like, there comes a point where the long run becomes too long, and actually you're doing damage that you're then not going to bounce back from when you need to be out 2 days later doing your next run. So that was always appealing to me, that the long run, regardless of the distance of the event, we're talking about 145 miler, and that wasn't distinctly different, if at all, from other stuff that's been much shorter. So yeah, those long runs never being that long were key, because of, as I said, and I sort of hinted at earlier, it's time out the house with a family. That's always a tough one to try and manage, coupled with the fact that I'm not really a morning person. Obviously you've always been one that's more naturally out of bed at 5 a.m, cup of coffee and in your garage in your gym. Like, that's not me. I want to stay in bed as long as I can, and I will try and eke out as late a start time as possible for those long runs as I can negotiate with my better half. So yeah, otherwise the weekday stuff, again, the sessions were always about an hour and a half, maybe tops, which is was generally manageable. Which again is, as I say, is just key for trying to fit it in around getting home, helping out with the kids, and then still trying to fit that in of an evening. So, I feel the positives were that there was never an unrealistic ask of a session. And yeah, I'm a little bit obsessive, I guess, that like I want to make sure that I've tried to tick the box with things. So if it says do that distance, I do that distance. I have been slapped on the wrist previously for cutting short the warm up and warm down elements.
Yes, you
but
have.
The actual the interval elements of a speed session, I would always want to try and deliver. So yeah, no, it's worked for me, as I say, and I think the proof's in the pudding that you can do 145 miles off of a 23-mile long run, the same as you could have if you'd done even further, even more, and potentially risked injury in the process. So yeah,
I think that is my philosophy. Anybody I work with, and I have this saying, I say it over and over again: running should fit into your life, not life fit into your running. And I just think that's so important to not just manage training load, because with you and family life and work life and just generally being as busy as you are, if I forced you into saying, look, you've got to do a 4th run a week, not only is that going to upset things at family life, potentially, make things harder at work, that then escalates into stress. And we already know that training is stress. So when you add life stress on top of training stress, that is just a recipe for injury, illness, and at best you going, I'm not fucking enjoying this anymore, and falling out of love with a sport that you clearly do love. So and I do that with all of my athletes. It's never about more. It's about what can you do and how can we best utilize that time to get you the result that you want. And not saying that my coaching is absolutely everything to do with your success, because I keep saying it over and over. Your mind is is a big part, and that is and that's also part of the reason why I don't give stupid long runs, because at a certain point ultra running becomes less about the physicality and more about the mind and reducing the amount of things that can go wrong. And you mentioned actually with your with the aid stations, when you got to the aid stations, you had things in a bag which had written down how many miles that aid station was at. So getting super organized and all of that kind of stuff. I think we talked about some of that stuff when we did Endure 24, making sure that you've got things in bags and it's all nice and organized, because the last thing you want to be doing when you're in an aid station at 125 miles is thinking, oh, what am I supposed to be having as fuel now? So all of that stuff that we've done together is it's paying off. So
Yep. And I think that mental game is massive, because beyond a certain point everyone is hurting physically, and so it's a case of what you made of mentally as to how you're going to manage both that, being in that situation which you put yourself in and tolerating it, and also overcoming things that are coming at you, be that weather, tripping over, or GI issues. Like, what are you made of mentally? That means you're just gonna stick it out and carry on. And that I think that's a harder thing, I guess, to probably coach someone in. I think that's part of
there is some mental stuff that some of that mindset stuff that we do talk about, and I do talk about it with everybody really, but it is the harder thing, because the mind is much harder to train than the body, that's for sure.
So James, you are incredibly versatile, having run like PBs at a 5K distance, but then also recently run 145 miles. Have you had enough time to think about what you'd like to do next? What kind of challenge, race would you like to have a go at next?
That's a good question, and a conversation that has been had many a time at home around ultra running. I mean, you're right. I've always been a little bit torn that as much as I've liked doing the long stuff, I also still like trying to go fast and see how fast I can go, I guess, before biology and age put an end to getting faster.
You've got plenty of time yet, mate. Plenty of time yet.
Yeah. So I've still the appeal of chipping away at what I would like to be a sub-3 marathon one day, and just getting faster over the short stuff definitely appeals. I mean, events wise, I'm signed up to the Arc of Attrition 50 miler in January, which I signed up to the day it opened, because it's one of those ones where if you don't get in there on opening day, you don't get in. So I just kind of jumped in there and got that diary pretty much a year in advance. I think in retrospect, I probably wouldn't have entered that event, but I'm in it now. I kind of.
And you couldn't get any different to Kenneth and Avon Canal race. It's
no,
it's much less than flat. It's not in the summer.
No.
No, I'm kind of questioning coastal paths in dark, wet, windy conditions, and whether that's because I am a bit of a fair weather runner. I don't really like wet and dark, so God
Yeah,
knows
you
what
didn't
got
enjoy
into
back into
me.
Cardiff, did you?
I wasn't the greatest. I won't be wearing I won't be wearing waterproof socks for this one. Put it that way.
Just
After the
just a comedy moment. So James wore waterproof sealskins. I'm going to call them out. Sealskin socks. What a load of shit! Because his feet were like water balloons for
Yeah.
7.5 hours. You had to empty your socks, didn't you, at one aid station?
it wasn't even an aid station, just the middle of a road. But yeah, there was literally it was like a blister of water around my foot. So I just took the sock
Wow.
off, and you could pour a decent number of mils of water just straight out the sock. So yeah, my feet probably ended up worse for wear because they were almost just
It was biblical that
soaking
day.
away.
What was it?
Yeah,
Storm Dennis
it
or
was a
something?
name. It was a named one, wasn't it?
Yeah. It was a tough day.
Yeah, but no. So yeah, Arc of Attrition 50 coming up. So I've kind of said to Nick I was going to give myself a month or so just to get back to some sense of feeling good in myself again after this race, and then turn sights towards that. But yeah, beyond that day, I've kind of
Sessions looked all right the last few days. So
yeah, but now I've kind of decided that for next year, mainly a negotiation with my wife as much as anything, that I'm going to have an off year from ultras next year, focus more on the shorter stuff. I guess a reflection of being a coached runner and doing ultras whilst also kind of being a local runner in a running club is often trying to meet the agendas of both, where running clubs enter leagues, there's lots of local short races that you want to be supporting with earning points for the club. Don't often, or certainly I wouldn't feel naturally kind of married up with those two training agendas. So yeah, I think part of next year will be looking to do some of that local stuff, getting a bit faster. And yeah, we'll see, having more time at home, I guess, where running's slightly less of an elephant in the room. Yeah.
We have these conversations often, don't we, James?
Indeed.
Any other questions from you there, Faye?
So I was thinking to finish. Do you want to tell us, for other busy parents and professional people, how you've clearly gone through how you've achieved that with Nick in regards to it's not all about massive miles, it's about the quality of the sessions. But what advice, let's say one piece of advice would you give to them, to kind of to make it work, to make that training work with life in general, because everybody's busy in different ways? What would be your one piece of advice that you'd give?
I think it's probably being willing to be flexible with how you're going to make it work. In an ideal world, I would have always done my runs on the Tuesday, Thursday, the Sunday that they were mapped into the plan. I would do them at the peak point in the day where I was going to feel at my freshest, fueled, whatever. And that isn't the way it works. It will often be, well, I've got a late shift on a Tuesday at work, so I'm going to do my Tuesday run on the Monday, and Thursday I've got to pick my son up from swimming, and then I've got to eat. So I'm actually not going to get out until 9 o'clock that night to get that run in. So it's going to be 9 o'clock. And as I said, it's often getting up earlier than some people might suit to get the big stuff in. So, I think you've got to be prepared to flex and bend around life, but still kind of see the value in the session. And Nick will say that dropping a run here or there isn't going to be detrimental to the overall aim, which is perfectly, and I've done that, and it's true. But I think if you end up cutting too much of it and dropping sessions, cutting things short, I guess you it'd then be hard at the end if you were to fall short of your goal to ask yourself those questions of what went wrong. And at least if I've stuck to the plan as much as I could, then that's one less thing to kind of point at as a reason why it didn't work out.
It's getting that bit. It's getting that bit right. It's, yes, I will say, and I do say to people, I'm not working with professional athletes who do this for a living, and I would expect, just the same as we all do turning up for work each day, you'd expect them to do the sessions unless there's an injury or something. With people like yourself, it is, life happens, and it's okay if you miss the odd session. Okay, we also need consistency. So if you're missing one session every week, then you're potentially, in your case, missing 33% of your training. That hasn't happened with you. The odd session, it is literally with you. I mean, your training peaks is green, 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 orange, red, green, 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 green. So your compliance is fantastic. It is getting that balance right, and you're right with the flexibility part, and that's where you and I've worked well together over the years to ensure that what you've got going on in your life works for your training, and your training works for your life.
Yeah.
Cool. James, it's been great having you on the show. And I look forward to getting you ready for the Arc of Attrition. That's going to be a big challenge for both of us. We need to get you on a stepper if we don't get you down to the coastal path, because there's a lot of steps, particularly in that last 5K. Oh my God, there's a lot of steps. But yeah, look forward to another challenge, and thank you for coming on the show.
Nice one. Cheers, Nick. And
thanks, James. Thank you.
Nice one. Cheers, both.
And that's another lap done on the Maximum Mileage Running podcast. Thank you for joining me and my athletes and my guests on this wild ride through the world of ultra, road and trail running. And remember, whether it's a mountain trail or the local road, every mile you conquer makes you stronger. Keep pushing, keep laughing, and of course, keep swearing when that hill just seems a little too steep. If you enjoyed today's journey, don't forget to subscribe and leave me a nice review. Your feedback does help me go that extra mile. Until next time, this is your host, Nick Hancock, reminding you to make every mile count. Run long, run strong, and run with maximum mileage. Catch you on the next run.